We could and probably should gripe all day about how EA should be giving us more Dead Space games, or at the very bare minimum, a competent remaster of the 3 games that already exist. However, as all Dead Space fans know at this point, EA, for whatever reason, are still refusing to do anything even resembling keeping the Dead Space IP alive. As a result of that, we are seeing what we sometimes see come out of situations like this, with other teams coming up with new games to fill the void in an unofficial way. Before we begin, please consider subscribing and enabling all notifications by clicking the bell icon. With that out of the way, let's get started. Yooka-Laylee capitalized on the appetite for more Banjo-Kazooie, and countless other spiritual successors have come and gone looking to do similar things, to varying degrees of success, of course. But that brings us back to Dead Space, and the fact that we haven't gotten anything from this beloved series in many years, other than a handful of independent projects trying to capitalize on the appetite for more of it. One of the more notable examples of this is the Callisto Protocol, a game made by folks who actually worked on the Dead Space games at one point in time. We talked about that game, and we will talk about it again later, but right now, another game is looking to take the Dead Space mantle, and it's a follow-up to a little-known 2019 game that seemed aimed in a similar way at Resident Evil, Daymare 1998. Daymare 1998 was made by a small team and made some interesting strides towards its goal of replicating the experience of Resident Evil, but hit a fairly low ceiling with its overall production quality and the fact that it just wasn't particularly scary. Ultimately, we ended up giving that game a 4 out of 10, so perhaps that doesn't bode super well for the team's next game, which is looking to put the spotlight on a Dead Space-style experience, Daymare 1994 Sandcastle. But given the ambition behind it, and the fact that they now have the last game's mistakes to learn from, it may be worth giving your attention to Daymare 1994, at least for now. The game was just recently announced, so as it would logically follow, we don't know a whole lot about it yet, other than the fact that it's pretty clearly trying to emulate Dead Space, the way the last game emulated Resident Evil 2. In the game's announcement trailer, we see some sort of undead ghoul in some kind of relatively Dead Space-like environment, which clearly resembles the industrial corridors of Dead Space on purpose. Unfortunately for said ghoul, it drops dead within seconds of the trailer beginning, and gives rise to some sort of evil ball of electric energy that floats above the corpse for a few seconds, as it seemingly gathers all of the dead creature's energy, then slowly floats down the causeway, disabling all electronics on its way to wherever it's going. While the evil ball of electric energy travels down the hall, we eventually find what looks like is going to be our main character, as she powers on her very Dead Space-esque suit, with Hades clearly being the standout visual cue. According to reports from sources close to the game, that stands for Hexacore Advanced Division for Extraction and Search, which seems to be the character's current employer, as an ex-government spy. The character doesn't get far down the hallway before she discovers yet another undead unspeakable, probably a friend of the one that we just saw die, and they don't seem very happy about that. Lights cut in and out, and our character seems timidly prepared for some sort of confrontation. And that's about it. It doesn't tell us a whole lot of concrete information, but it certainly sets the mood, makes its inspirations clear, and lets us know what sort of experience we're probably in for here. Our main character is named Delilah Reyes, and while we're not sure why she's back in Idaho where the events of the first game took place, or what she's really doing in this trailer, we do know that she is the main character, and is who we can expect to get to know as the events of Daymare 1994 unfold. Is she related to the characters in the previous game? Is what she's doing somehow part of what goes wrong in Daymare 1998? It's hard to say at this point, but logic would seem to imply that there will be a tangible connection between the two. We do know a couple of little tidbits outside of that though, including the fact that the user interface will be completely overhauled for this game. That means a new inventory system, and an entirely new arrangement of in-game menus. We also know that there will be survival horror over-the-shoulder style gameplay with puzzles breaking up the exploration and combat. Speaking of the combat, we should also be getting new weapons and abilities, including a frost blast that uses liquid nitrogen. How that will be used is still unclear, but there are some screenshots that might be shedding a little bit of light on that, with some frozen enemies that may or may not have been the victim of Delilah's frosty attack. Given that the game takes place 4 years before the last game, it will be interesting to see how it stands up on its own 2 feet, and how it balances that with connecting to Daymare 1998. On top of that, it's also going to be interesting to see how much it leans into its emulation of another game, as opposed to bringing its own ideas to the table. If there was one universally accepted criticism of Daymare 1998, it was that the game perhaps leaned a little too heavily on simply paying homage to and letting everyone know that it's inspired by an older game on an almost constant basis. There's nothing inherently wrong with being a game like that in theory, but if you're going to ask for people's money and many hours of their time, it's not a bad idea to have some more ideas of your own than Daymare 1998 arguably had. At the end of the day, if you want to play Resident Evil 2, you can always go play that. It's the same situation with the Dead Space games. If I want to play Dead Space, I can go play it. It's still a game that exists, and is playable on multiple different platforms, and there's really nothing stopping me from doing that. So while I think the nostalgia angle is always an interesting one, and certainly helps get your foot in the door with an audience, it can never really replace having enough meat on the bone for your own game. Ultimately, you have to provide an experience that gives people enough reason to buy your game and stick with it to the end. If you want your game to be anything more than a quick cash grab, that is. So while I like the idea of Daymare 1994, and it looks like they have everything they need in terms of experience and acumen to pull it off, I'm personally going to keep my eyes trained on what it's bringing to the table for itself. If the feedback from their previous game was truly received by them, then hopefully we'll learn more soon about how they are taking that into account. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, now is a great time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every single day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Bolt.